It's sort of a warm hug, I think, the film. As a film, I think it is something that we really need to see. And I didn't exaggerate when I said it's like an elixir for these very cynical times. So when a film like this comes along, you suddenly are stopped in your tracks, and then you wonder whatever happened to this kind of film. This used to be the default option of our mainstream cinema back in the day.
Hello and welcome to the Indian Express. I'm Primankur Biswas. With me, I have Indian Express's film critic Shubhra Gupta. Welcome, Shubhra. And
Hi.
today we are here to talk about Vidhu Vinod Chopra's directorial 12th Fail, which is proving to be the sleeper hit of the year. Shubhra Gupta reviewed the film and gave it a positive review, calling it an elixir for the dark times. So, Shubhra, first of all, what did you think of 12th Fail as a film?
I as a film, I think it is something that we really need to see. And I didn't exaggerate when I said it's like an elixir for these very cynical times, because as we go along, anything to do with goodness, or to do with sincerity, or to do with people who actually do the hard work, they get into the trenches and they dig deep, and then in the hope that they will come out into the light. I think that kind of quality of life, and as it is reflected in our fiction, has become so hard to find now, because we are constantly looking at the other side. We're looking at the negative much more than we are at the positive. So when a film like this comes along, you suddenly are stopped in your tracks, and then you wonder whatever happened to this kind of film. This used to be the default option of our mainstream cinema back in the day, where the good would win, the bad would lose. And it would be, you would go home, having got some of that positivity with you. So I think this film, circles back to that old-fashioned kind of filmmaking, where the hard work of the protagonist. I won't really call Vikrant Massey the traditional hero, but he's more heroic than any other hero that I think I've seen in these 12 months. He gets again, he sort of is up against the kind of tremendous odds that we only hear about, or only kind of it's myth making, that you sat under a lamplight and you studied for your exam. The last time we heard somebody say that was Abdul Kalam. And this
And
is
our parents. And our parents.
and
Yeah.
our parents, of course, cool, of course. That parents, more grandparents than parents, I would say, because they really had that under that generation. During the time that they lived in this country, you could not take electricity for granted, you could not take water for granted, you couldn't take any of the basic things that we, the middle class, large tracts of middle class India, has now started taking for granted. It's only about 20-25 years old, Primankur. There was a time when there were, everybody had to line up for their atta and the dal and the chawal, and their basic necessities were not taken care of. Under those circumstances, if you could, overcome those massive difficulties, and you know uh, get into this exam, which can be life changing, the UPSC, which is what this story is about. And it's also about, never saying no, and never saying die, and never giving up, and just like that spider, never giving up.
We'll touch upon the box office collection of the film later. Of course, it's been doing really well. But I just want to shine a light on the director, Vidhu Vinod Chopra, who seems to found his, mojo back, right? Because Vidhu Vinod Chopra was such a big name. Who he made Parinda, 1942, and then of course he produced a lot of those Munna Bhai films, Rajkumar Hirani films. Then somehow he, as a director, in a way lost his mojo somewhere in between. And this film seems to be, in a way, his comeback. Would you call that? Like, just wanted to know what you think of it. This film as with Vinod Chopra film.
It was very hard for me to actually believe that it was a Vidhu Vinod Chopra film, because this is not the kind of film he's ever made before. He has, as you've just said, he's made Parinda, which I think is one of the most beautiful. It's gritty, it's poetic, and it's the gangster film of all time, I think. He then, of course, 1952, a love story where it's a period film. It's a pre set in the pre-independence times. It has the older hero and a younger heroine, and the lots of lovely song, dances, everything. Also his earlier films, Khamosh, and Khamosh was actually the kind of filmmaking that Vidhu Vinod Chopra comes from. Is the very the very indie kind of films that students from FTI, which he was one, they gravitate towards that kind of scrappy filmmaking where there is not too much money, where everyone joins hands and makes the next masterpiece. So his films, the earlier films, if you see them, they are now they feel a little dated, but you see the kind of tensions that he manages to get even in those Sazai Maut, Khamosh, for both of them. If you see those films, you see the sharpness in those films, and you know that this is a person to watch out for. And then, of course, Vidhu and Vidhu Vinod Chopra, Sudhir Mishra, all of these people got together. Nasiruddin Shah, Ravi Baswani, they all got together to make Jane Vidhu Yaro. They were all compatriots. They were all people who were going to change the world. And I mean, Vidhu Vinod Chopra, Nasir, and these ones characters are called. One is called Vinod and one is called Sudhir.
Okay.
Basically,
Yeah,
because it is read with the Vinod. You do know that, right? So,
yeah. But then
anyway,
one, not many people know that he was actually involved in the making of
the
Jana
making of,
Vidhu. Yeah,
yes,
I'm
it was,
guessing.
and like I said, they were all these young filmmakers who were there to study the great, I mean, to actually learn from the great cinema auteurs of the last few decades. And when you go and become a student at FTII back in those days, you were doused in that kind of cinematic traditions where the story came first, and the whole idea of the Bollywood way of making movies, where the hero and the heroine are very important to the scheme of things. The story is just retrofitted around them. So actually, Vidhu Vinod Chopra's journey towards his kind of filmmaking started from that, and then he moved into Parinda, which I think was glossy but also very gritty. So he started to get the gloss of the the starry material. But I think Nana Patekar, Anil Kapoor, Madhuri Dixit, Jackie Shroff, those, they actually make you feel that they are who they are supposed to be on screen, despite the fact that they are all very, very shiny stars. um, and then, of course, he went into production with the Rajkumar Hirani's feel good, that kind of feel good filmmaking where the protagonist was good at heart, and that goodness really spreads through the film. I found 12 Fail very much in that mold. And that's why I was thinking, I mean, maybe it is, Rajkumar Hirani's spirit, which is watching over this film. I really thought it was Vidhu Vinod with Rajkumar Hirani, that kind of combination, which actually comes together in this film. In a really good way. In the film surprised me because it was not preachy. I mean, it was giving you these large life lessons that, like working hard is the only way to go forward, that honesty is really, really the best policy, is something we've lost sight of, right? In the last years, or, so many years, where liberalization has taken over, where, we get shiny malls and swanky cars, and, that kind of ethic where you had to work for what you actually got in the end is somehow been lost sight of. So I think that film brings that ethic back. It brings that kind of filmmaking back. And I think it really gives Vidhu Vinod Chopra a real boost, because in between, his directorials were not really worth anybody's time.
Yeah, and interestingly, his last film on Kashmir, I remember you gave it not a bad review. You said that it's like ethically it is sound and that bit is there, but but yeah, like he seemed to have lost the balance, right? Which you point out is there in this film, the balance between sensitivity and craft and commerce, which seems to.
And strong, yeah, and strong storytelling. All the notes are there. He's hitting all the right notes, and he's hitting them all at the right time. And with Shikara, his film on Kashmir, it was very much a Vidhu film, because he is Kashmiri and he feels for that, for his region. And it was a film but it's the story we've seen before, people who were chased out of that sort of paradise, and the paradise is lost, and what we can actually now do. But as a film, I think in terms of just exciting filmmaking, I think he really has come back to his forte in this one, where he's telling you a story, and he's telling you that, and telling it so well that you cannot really take your eyes off the screen.
And this film is, when one says word of mouth, this film actually is a prime example of that, right? Seems to be like people recommending it. It is actually doing much better in his third week than it was in the first week. So people are actually going and telling their friends that this is a very exciting film. People are reading reviews which are really good and positive, and that seems to be working in this case, which is so rare these days, right? Because nowadays it's all about that boom opening, and then that's that's the time, that's a very short period of time, either you make it or you don't. But this seems to be totally bucking that trajectory.
Yeah, yeah. So this shoot and scoot thing that most producers are aiming at, where you open big on Friday, you grab as many screens as you can, not just in India but outside if you have the kind of budgets, and before the reviews start actually hitting, you roll up your blanket and you disappear because you've done your weekend. That's why they say that the film's true worth only is visible on the Monday after the first weekend, because that's when you realize whether people are actually getting up there and plonking their money at the box office, or the theaters are empty. And which is something that Bollywood has, Hindi cinema has actually been facing for the last 2 or 3 years, especially post pandemic, when they were struggling to figure out which direction should they be taking. And where all of last year everyone was sort of going on and on about how Bollywood has lost the plot, and about how only the films from the south are doing well, and only those filmmakers who belong to the south of the Vindhyas know how to make cinema that can actually go out big and become massy. But here is a film which is a mass film. It is not pandering to any of the kind of uh, toxic masculine tropes that so many films from the south, especially the ones that really go big, are so doused with. This one is just a straightforward story of a small town young man who worked and worked and worked his way towards a point where he can actually say, yes, I made something of myself. And the film, I mean, the person that it is based on, it's a true life story of Manoj Kumar Sharma, who also comes from Madhya Pradesh, who also met his to be wife in this in a coaching center in Delhi, at that in those
Mukherjee Nagar.
sort of hubs. Yeah, in those hubs where only those little coaching centers are, or there are rooms where 12 people, there are 12 to a person. They just kind of, they exist only because they can go to their next class and do the prelims and work for the prelims, work for the interviews, work for the mains. That's all you hear. You hear prelims, you hear, this is all you hear in those hubs. So I think this, somewhere, the fact that it was based on a true life story gives it that heft, and it gives it that realism that we really have been missing again from our mainstream cinema, because it's all the glossiness, and the has sort of taken away the fact that there needs to be not just a heart, not just a beating heart, but it has to be also relatable. The characters that we are spending 2.5 hours of our life with have to relate to ourselves, to our inner selves, and to tell us that, look, if he can do it, so can I. That's why this film has such strength, because it's telling so many people who don't have the social capital to actually buy their way out of poverty, to say that, look, this is it's such an India story. It's such a very, very the kind of story that we all love to hear. It's underdog. It's someone who has doesn't know English, that one thing that sort of catapults you into places that you've never been. And it tells you that yes, it can be done. And yes, if you do fail the first time, it doesn't matter. You get up, dust yourself off, and you get off, and you do it again, another time, another time, and you are given the chance. Take the chance, seize the day, and go forward. I think that combination, and Vikrant Massey's
Yeah, I was
performance,
just
I think.
coming to that. Vikrant Massey's performance. This seems to be his big moment. He has got a new Rajkumar Hirani film. He has signed. It seems there are rumors that he has signed a new Rajkumar Hirani film.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like after this. So, and he is an actor who was always consistently good, has had his moments, but spurts of glory, but never really played that, like that leading man, like that this kind of a role, right? Never got a role like this, and he seems to have, like, totally, as you said, seized it and made
Yeah.
made it work. So yeah,
Yeah.
you could tell us about his.
Yeah, if you remember, I'm sure you've seen Konkona Sen Sharma's A Death in the Gunj.
Death in the Country. Of course, he was lovely
That
there. Yeah.
that character of Shutu, I think Vikrant plays it in a way that you want to reach out to the screen, and you want to hold his hand, and you want to give him a hug and say, it's okay, things will be okay. Don't worry. It will be okay. He has that quality where he can be vulnerable. He is not fearful of being vulnerable on screen, of laying himself out for us to see. And hard to do that for people who are calcified stars, because it's not, they're not playing characters, they're actually playing themselves. Here Vikrant has been given a fantastic opportunity to actually play this character, with all the with the kind of background that he comes from. And that grandmother who says, who's kind of the very the kind of salty, feisty, quirky grandma that these days you see in the movies, but she has something to impart. And the thing is, I think we've also got a little bit very snippy about films which have messages. I mean, I am one of those people who do believe that not every film, not every mainstream film which has an entertaining core to it needs to have a message. But having said that, if a film really wants to pick up on a message and do it in this kind of consistent manner, then I think it's the most effective way of telling your story, because you're also telling someone. I mean, you're not just giving someone a character, you're also giving him an arc, and you're also giving him a beginning, and where he's going. So that journey, I think, is that's why this film is it sort of brings you back to the kind of movie making that Hindi cinema used to do so well some years back, and has completely lost sight of. So I really was very, very, sort of happy, and is really surprised in a good way with this film, because it didn't, like I said when I began, it's not preachy, it's not standing on a pulpit, it's not beating you on the head with, look, do this, nothing of the kind. But it is giving you, in this, the way this character has been formed, this grit, and this kind of thing that he gets. No, that I will not do the dishonest thing, I will not do the wrong thing, I will do the right thing, and I will succeed. I mean, how more powerful can you get? I mean, this is really, truly something that we all want to believe.
True. And to wrap things up, as you said, it's a film which embeds its characters in authentic settings. It's a story that you feel is important, and it's the story is told with authenticity. And this is something that Hindi films, at least, have, in a way, not been so consistent in delivering, at least in the last few years. Do you see a lot more of such stories, or a lot more of these kind of stories, as opposed to the Jawan and a Pathan, which is of a different idiom altogether? coming back to Indian screens? Do you see that happening, or at least after the success of 12th Fail?
Well, I think what will happen is that producers will get a little more confident about putting out stories like this. I think it is a sleeper hit. I don't think anybody from the production house, my feeling, I could be wrong, expected this to go out, I mean, to become such a big moment, because it's not just about the box office, it's also about the impact that this film has. I think it is bigger than its box office. I think it has the kind of legs that some of the old classics used to have. I think 30 years down the line, when people talk about a film which inspired them, I think this film will come up, over and over again, as far when people cast back and think of films that gave them something to go on forward with. I also want to very quickly add that the Vikrant Massey was not alone in the way he forged his way. I think the characters that he's given, the Anant Vijay Joshi's friend, the one who he meets in that Gwalior station and brings him along and gives him his first, like, a little space to live in, and is constantly, I mean, he's basically not interested in the UPSC exams at all, but it's only his father's will that he goes through. And you see him and you see his emotions also. It's not that the camera is only interested in the lead actor. It's the others that are also very well edged. It's also I forget the name of I think it was Ayushman Pushkar, or the one who is, he teaches, he what is his name? I'm not sure, I don't remember. uh he's the one who gives them all the lessons, and he says, acha aa jao, padhne ke liye aa jao, and they all start, because he himself hasn't made it, but he wants everyone else who comes from this kind of humble background to be able to crack this really tough exam, because he says, if ek ne kiya to hum sab ne kiya. Again, that's a very warm, a very big kind of it's a thing that encompasses all of us, which is again a great great, it lends great warmth to the film when someone is not just for themselves, but they're doing it for everyone else. It's not me, it's not just me, it's us. And that really brings this film, it's sort of a warm hug, I think, the film.
That's high praise from you, and I know I will definitely watch it now after hearing all this from you this holiday season, and I urge all our viewers to watch it too if you can. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Shubhra. You've joined us from Riyadh, where you were there for the festival. Thanks for joining. That's all from us. Thank you.